Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 145, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. What is up, saints and sinners in the Charleston area and beyond? It is Wednesday, getting through the week, doing okay, despite the cold still lingering. I mentioned in the last episode I won't complain about it too much on this podcast, I promise. Feeling a little better, but still, some hacking, coughing here and there, and some wheezing, and having to catch my breath sometimes if I'm, especially when I'm recording a podcast, just talking too fast. So hopefully won't hear many of those as I try to hide them away from the mic so they can be edited out. But doing better, thankfully, and hopefully, by Friday's episode, I'm going to be back to 100%. We will see. That's about it going on here. Not much has changed in the last few days. So let's just go ahead and get into the news because we've got plenty to talk about. Have you noticed it's been a little toasty outside? Just a little hot? Yeah, it's pretty darn hot, and it has been for a little while now. No surprise. I mean, it's July in the deep south. But you've been paying attention to the news. It is a heat wave pretty much everywhere. Some states have had it a lot worse than us. Texas comes to mind, where they've just had incredible heat, and have seen, unfortunately, several people die as a result of that. And, things like this, I know it's going to be controversial. Climate change. I know some people, probably if you're listening to this, you believe in climate change. You believe that humans are partly responsible for these changes. Well, this relates to the climate change crisis and Charleston looking to hold quote unquote big oil accountable for their actions. You may remember that the city a couple years ago filed a lawsuit. We'll dive into that a little bit more here in a moment. And there's been a recent ruling on it that could be seen as a win for the city of Charleston. So a federal judge has let Charleston have this early win in its climate change lawsuit by ruling that the case can stay here in the state of South Carolina, which is exactly what the city of Charleston wanted. U.S. District Judge Richard Gergel agreed back on July 5th that Charleston's bid seeking to make fossil fuel companies pay for climate damages could proceed in state court. And of course, that's where it was initially filed. City officials told the Post and Courier that they welcomed the decision, which some legal experts told the Post and Courier that this would create a more favorable stage in arguing that the multiple oil and gas companies which have operated in the U.S. for decades knew of the environmentally hazard effects of their products. As I mentioned back in 2020, the city of Charleston filed this lawsuit against 24 major oil and pipeline companies, alleging that their products and the spread of misinformation about fossil fuels have caused climate change, leading to a repetitive and disastrous flooding here in the city. Nationwide, there are almost 24 other state and local governments that are pursuing similar litigation against oil companies as they seek to get paid out for climate-related damages. The only government in the South to file such a case, though, is Charleston. So, although there are, 24 out there nationwide, Charleston is the only city in the South to file this type of litigation. So far to date, 6 federal appeals courts, which also, by the way, that includes the Fourth Circuit, which has jurisdiction over South Carolina, and 15 federal district courts have ruled against the fossil fuel industry's arguments as it sought federal jurisdictions. The result has kept those complaints in state courts. So, a long ways to go in this. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But an early win for the city of Charleston, make it a little easier for them to be able to have this case heard in courts. But like I said, it'll be interesting once this actually moves forward and what ends up ultimately being the result, if it's a settlement, if it's ruled in favor of the cities that are filing these complaints. But we could see something similar to the only thing I can think of off the top of my head was like tobacco industries. Those companies being held accountable for all sorts of different things they've done in their past as it relates to advertising, misinformation, not being forthcoming about what their products do. So yeah, very interesting. This is just the first step of many, and I'll be sure to keep you posted. Some upsetting news, as an 18-year-old transgender man has been found dead in the state of South Carolina, and a man that he met online has been accused of the murder. Jacob Williamson, apparently, according to media reports, left his home in Lawrence, South Carolina on the evening of June 30th. He said goodbye to Promise Edwards, who is someone who had taken him into her home a month and a half previous to this. And why was he living with someone else, not with family or something along those lines? Well, it's because he had actually been rejected by some members of his family for being trans. Unfortunately, that's a story you do hear a lot, and is one of the many reasons why there are organizations out there that try to help homeless youth, or in Williamson's case, he is an adult at the age of 18, but help them, find a place to live and get support because a lot of families just aren't understanding. In any event, Joshua Newton of Monroe, North Carolina, with whom Williamson had begun an online relationship, picked him up in Lawrence, and this was supposedly for a date at Carowinds, the amusement park, of course, on the North Carolina South Carolina border. However, that didn't happen as Newton ended up driving Williamson back to Monroe, and police say Williamson was killed in a house there. His body was found this past Tuesday along a road in Pageland, South Carolina, which is just over the state line from Monroe. Um, Real quick, I slightly misspoke. I said this past Tuesday. That should be confused with yesterday, Tuesday, when you're listening to this podcast. It was the Tuesday prior. So far, media reports have not stated how Williamson was killed, so we don't know the manner or what exactly happened, but it appears police believe it was homicide, and they arrested Newton, who is 25 years old, and his girlfriend, Victoria Smith, who is 22. Newton is charged with first-degree murder and obstruction of justice, while Smith is charged with obstruction of justice and being an accessory after the fact. This is according to officials with the Union County Sheriff's Department, which is in North Carolina, and that information was relayed to WBTV. A lieutenant with Union County told Newsweek that while a motive is still being determined, they don't believe, or in their words, it does not appear that Williamson was specifically targeted because of his gender identity. They haven't released, any evidence or details. So, we don't know, but it's hard to believe that that is the case, that the murder came down to something else. It just, when you see something like this and you see the rhetoric that's been going on in this country, it's hard to think that that's not exactly why he was killed. Speaking of the tragedy of trans people being killed, usually because of their gender identity, Williamson and someone by the name of Chanel Perez Ortiz of Puerto Rico are now the 13th and 14th trans people known to have died by violence in the U.S. this year. As I said, of course, it's not always because of their identity, but frequently that is the reason they are murdered each year. So I wanted to share the story because it's sad. It happened here in South Carolina, but also just kind of circle back. And even though police are currently saying it does not appear that gender identity had anything to do with the crime, I find that hard to believe. I know that's an opinion that I'm basing on really nothing because there's been no evidence released, and I could be 100% wrong. There could be a whole other side to this story. But we do know that these things happen, and they happen for the reasons, the sole bigoted reason of someone just doesn't like their identity for whatever reason. And it's hard not to think that the rhetoric that you see online, some from politicians, not just random yahoos that you don't know with anonymous trolley accounts online. I mean, we see politicians frequently demonizing the LGBTQ community as a whole, but specifically over the last year, we have seen a lot in regards to drag queens and transgender people. Specifically, those two have been the most attacked within that community. But as a whole, the community has seen a lot of attacks online. We've seen dehumanizing language about them. We have seen uh, just outrageous allegations. We have seen people taking, one incident and trying to assign blame to an entire community, which is wrong no matter who that community is. People just saying inaccurate and horrible things, because that is, for whatever reason, the cause of the day, for a particular group of people, and it's become political talking points. And when you dehumanize people and make up horrific lies about how they're all groomers and they're trying to go after your children and all that nonsense, it's not surprising that something like this could happen. And again, we don't know for sure. Even the police have said one spokesperson for the police department says they don't think this is a hate crime. So I could be wrong, but like I said, this does happen, and would think we're going to continue to see it, just because we always see crime, of course, but also when you see people being dehumanized, being spoken down about, being told these lies about their community as a whole, it's not surprising that some sad, unwell people, as small of a percentage of our population as it may be, are going to take that as a green light to not just say horrible things online, which a lot of people do, but that extra small sliver of our segment of our population that'll think it's okay to bring violence into the equation, whether that goes all the way to actually murdering someone or just assaulting. And I'm using the term just in comparison to murder, of course, because assault is not a quote unquote just a small thing. It's obviously also wildly unacceptable. So I just wanted to put that out there. Keep an eye on these types of stories because, like I said, unfortunately, I don't think this is the last of it. As I mentioned, as far as we know, there are now been 14 trans people who have died by violence in the U.S. this year alone. That's just our country. And there's no way all 14 were just, had nothing to do with their identity. Undoubtedly, I would be surprised if it wasn't the vast majority were murdered because of, someone's bigotry towards them. So that's why I'm sharing it. Just keep an eye on it. And if you have people in your life using some of this rhetoric and spreading these lies, please call them out on it. And there's a big difference between legitimate concerns or legitimate issues. For instance, if a transgender person indeed committed some kind of crime against a child, that person should be called out for it. They should face consequences for it. And there's a way to talk about those things that doesn't dehumanize and attempt to incriminate an entire community. One person does not speak for anyone else in whatever group they belong to. So if you see people trying to use this as a springboard, or not this, I should say, any kind of story, any legitimate concern or issue, trying to springboard that into a bigger picture issue that doesn't exist, please call them out on it. Clemson University on Tuesday became the latest school to block TikTok on its campus network. The reason they are saying is because of cybersecurity and safety issues, and they wanted to implement this ahead of the students' return next month for the fall semester. The university said in a statement that went out to students and staff on July 7th that this step allows the university to protect institutional resources and information while also safeguarding the privacy of a wide variety of devices that will be connected to the Clemson network. Faculty, staff, students, and visitors will still be able to access the video sharing social media app on their personal devices. However, they'll only be able to do so using their cellular connection or, Wi-Fi that is not related to Clemson. The university's Wi-Fi or wired network, for that matter, any connection to their network will not allow them to access TikTok on any device. The university, by the way, has several official TikTok accounts of their own, and the future of those accounts was not made clear in the email, and there hasn't been any communication about it from the school. This is not something that's abnormal, although this may be the first time you're hearing about it. There's actually over 40 universities across the country that have also taken this step to block TikTok in some capacity on their campus network. This includes Coastal Carolina University, which is up in Conway, Auburn University in Alabama, and there's actually all 26 institutions that make up the university system of Georgia have all implemented similar measures. In addition to that, you may remember South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster requested a block of TikTok on all state government devices back in December. So if you've been in the dark and don't know much about this all stems from the fact that TikTok is an app that's owned by a Beijing-based private tech company called ByteDance, and they've recently been the focus of national concern from lawmakers in Congress, as well as people in individual states, all related to cybersecurity, worried about our information being taken. And some other states have made similar measures or have implemented similar measures that Clemson has. For instance, back in April, Montana became the first state to pass a complete ban on the app on all personal devices. That's right. You can't, in Montana, it is illegal to have TikTok on your personal device. Does not matter what the network you're connected to. For its part, TikTok and some content creators on the platform have sued under, for these, especially with Montana, but some of these other instances. And they are asking a federal judge to specifically block the Montana ban before that law actually takes effect in January. So we'll see if that ends up. I think it's a little bit different on the state level versus like universities blocking things. I think they have some more legal leeway with that. So even if a judge rules in TikTok's favor in Montana, that probably won't affect the schools and university bans, but something to keep an eye on, as well as if any other schools continue this trend of blocking the app. It's been a while, but it's time for yet another Murdaugh story. Yes, believe it or not, we have some Murdaugh news. It involves Buster Murdaugh, the only surviving family member in the Alec Murdaugh's family, immediate family, I should say, uh, is going to speak for the first time about the case and everything involving it. Fox Nation, which is a streaming service that Fox, specifically Fox News, created, is going to release a program called The Fall of the House of Murdaugh. It's going to be a 3-hour long docuseries that they say will feature exclusive access to the family, friends, and defense team of Alec Murdaugh. It is set to debut on the platform on September 12th. So if you're interested in it, you can look into how you can get Fox News, if you so, or not Fox News, excuse me, Fox Nation, if you so choose. According to a release that was sent out by the platform, the 3-part series will feature sit-down interviews with high-profile figures connected to the case, like some of the ones I mentioned just a moment ago. But specifically, the one that's really catching headlines already is the fact that this will be the first televised interview by Buster Murdaugh. So wanted to throw that out there. I know how much people care about this case and are interested in it. I am not interested enough to purchase a subscription of any kind to Fox Nation. I don't even know if it has subscription or if it could be free. I have no interest in doing so, but I would be lying if I said the aspect of Buster being involved and actually granting an interview is very, very fascinating and has the potential to be explosive depending on what he says, or enlightening, or I think it'll be very, no matter what he says in this documentary, whatever airs, I think will be really interesting, regardless of what exactly he says in it. So if you are interested, September 12th is when you'll be able to start streaming at least that first episode. I don't know if it's one of those things where they're all going to come out at once or not, but if you're interested, September 12th is the day. That'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. I actually have more stories I want to talk about, but we're going to have to wait until Friday. So be sure to tune in then. The easiest way to do so is to subscribe to this podcast. That ensures that you don't miss any episodes. It automatically downloads or alerts you when a new episode is out. So be sure to do that. You can also rate and review this podcast on whatever streaming platform you're listening on. That is a great help for me. But be sure, like I said, on Friday, we've got some really important stories that I will be talking about on that episode. So hopefully that little teaser encourages you or reminds you to subscribe. If you'd also like to help out the podcast and Holy City Center, there's a couple other ways you can do so. You can go to holycitycenter.com/shop to pick up some merchandise, or go to patreon.com/holycitycenter to sign up for one of those support tiers. Thank you for listening, and a big thank you to Cole Collins of LMC Sound System, who produces each and every episode, as well as a big thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show as well. Can't wait to talk to you on the next show this Friday, but until then, good night and good luck.